Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of the Colombian docudrama Noche Herida, which was shown at the Kino Babylon as part of their Latino Film Festival. This film was directed by Nicolas Rincon Hilie. It was produced by Mano Cubia and was edited by Cedric Soenen. Now, I wasn't really so sure how I was going to approach this film. I knew that this film did have something heavy that I wanted to talk about and something that was rather important and urgent for us, the viewers, to check it out. And let me just tell you that I thought it was actually a great ride throughout. And of course, everything about it did feel like I was living in these people's shoes, and there were definitely things that made me understand about, Colombian society a little bit more, especially in let's say the lower class parts as well. So let's start off with the story. Now, this story revolves around an elderly woman by the name of Blanca who has to take care of her grandsons. Now, unfortunately, one of her older grandsons, Didier, is rather rebellious, and he doesn't really want to continue his education even further. And, Blanca definitely has a lot of problems with dealing with this situation now that she has to pretty much raise her grandkids because, well, their mother has pretty much kicked the bucket. And she also tries to show her support, especially to her elder daughter, Claudia, who also graduated from university. So you could really see that this is a story that definitely shows the struggle of not just Blanca as a person, but everyone involved in the lower class system in Colombia or in any other Latino country. And of course, the film at times tends to be rather slow in the beginning. And sometimes I do notice that sometimes the slow pace of this film can turn some people off. I was almost about to be turned off by it. But as the film went on, I actually got myself even more involved, especially with Blanca's plight. So you could really see that, of course, though the film did have a pretty slow start, it managed to get much better throughout the later parts of the film, and it managed to pick up a little bit of steam, especially where Blanca was concerned with her situations and all that. It may take some time to get used to, but if you're patient enough, and if you do like films or documentaries that kind of make you think for a little bit about the situations that these people get themselves into, then I'm sure it's going to be beneficial. And then we get to the cinematography. Now, you could really tell that they're trying to emit real life in this film. So you won't really see a lot of flashy shots. You're not going to see a lot of camera angles that will end up being from one shot there, one shot here, and one shot everywhere. It usually feels like it's just one shot at times, and even in some scenes as well. But it's also to invoke real life in the villages that they're living in, especially when it comes to the soundtrack. Now, for the most part, the soundtrack is quite limited to traditional or even popular Colombian songs. Though for the most part, the film really tends to have that sort of quietness all throughout, much like in real life. And since this is a docudrama, a drama in the style of a documentary or vice versa, these people are pretty much real. Blanca really goes through a lot of suffering in this film. She goes through a lot of pain. She tries her best to mean well to her grandsons and especially to her one of her daughters as well. And you could really see the pain in her eyes, the pain in her heart of how she wants to make sure that they have a better life for themselves. And she knows that, of course, she has to also lay down the law for them. And when Didier gets himself into trouble in school, she, well, does not hesitate to try to make sure that Didier goes on the right path. Now, you could really see that Blanca is pretty much the bread and butter of this film. She's the main reason why this film is, well, pretty much the way it is. And you could really see that she's the one who moves the action along. And it's all thanks to Mr. Rinconhilia's superb direction. And especially when you come to her grandsons. Now, Didier, even though not a lot is known about him, he's quite known to be quite rebellious, even though he kind of means well to Blanca. But unfortunately, he has this rebellious attitude in which he thinks he doesn't need to be educated. You could see that at times he's kind of fed up with school. And you could kind of see that there are times that, you know, he's just not sure what he wants in his life. And then we get to John Anderson and Camilo. Now, they're also like rambunctious fellows as well, who like to have fun at times and like to make jokes as well. But sometimes they also have to live with the harsh situations that they get themselves into. And with Claudia, not much is known about her as a person. But it's safe to say that, okay, she's the one who also manages to really earn herself an education, and she is definitely someone who uses that education hopefully to even better herself. So overall, I have to say that even though this film did get to a pretty slow start, it really does show the hardships of living in a society in which, you know, there would be violence happening and a lot of things that are happening in a lot of villages or even in small towns. This is definitely an eye-opener for someone like me who's never even been to Colombia or even set foot in their villages, though I have lived in the Philippines for quite some time and there were villages similar to them. So this was definitely an eye-opener for me. And I give this film a well-deserved 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, it did have a pretty slow start. But once you're patient enough and once you allow yourself to get invested in the story, then this will pretty much do good for you. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in tomorrow where I have, well, a lot of movie reviews planned, especially for the Latino Film Festival. So until then, see you tomorrow.